Welcome to Small Big Wins, a podcast that curates stories of folks who use their courage, caliber, and conviction to transform people's lives. They always look beyond personal gains and strive for the greater good. Their stories often begin with a dream as their only means. Folks who allow the soft lights of their hearts to be their guide, even when circumstances threaten to harden them. Folks who start small but win big. Hi, I'm Harshvardhan Jaju. Let's begin. Tanvi Nair is a business analyst with a Master of Science focused in statistics from Pune University. She is an out and proud trans woman and a vocal LGBT advocate. Her life till recently has been mired in duality, Pretence outside and her authentic self inside. She is also a TEDx speaker and works for several diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. Let's talk to Tanvi about the travails and triumphs in her journey. Tanvi, welcome to Small Big Wins.
Thank you so much, Harsh, for having me. And it's a pleasure for me to be here.
Tanvi, I think, many of us live with incongruency.
Yeah.
You may speak about it or not. How has your situation been more difficult with the incongruency?
So, as you said, all of us live with incongruencies of our own. But something as basic as gender identity, a gender identity to a person is very innate. It's very basic, right? You start realizing it as soon as you start seeing the world. So I realized my incongruency as soon as I started seeing my life. I started going to school or as young as that. So that confusion, and it is internal though. Many people say it's internal, but many things internal do have a reflection outside. You see it. What's inside comes outside, right? So that confusion, that incongruence reflected in my general life as well. I was always confused. A friend of mine used to nickname me as the confused one because I never had the right answer. And I would overthink everything so much that you can't imagine. I give this example a lot. If I had to go for a trek, a friend called me, okay, let's go for a trek. In my mind, I have reached that trek. I'm already tired. Now I'm thinking, should I go? Should I not go? And that's true with every decision in your life, smallest ones. And it's exhausting to think so much about everything. So if you're struggling with incongruence with such a basic thing as gender, then it kind of messes with your life as well because you struggle so much. And second thing, we can't even express it because basically my parents had no clue about it. There was no ally because I came from a small town or middle class family. There was no one around me to talk to this about. Because from their point of view, it was wrong. It was just plain wrong. So that is something that was, as growing up, took some time to wait for 25 years to just accept it and acknowledge it.
And how did you manage to spend so much time holding on this to just your own self? What was your inner journey at that time?
I guess there's only one thing. We all hold on to hope. So throughout those growing up years, I just hoped someday things would be different. And that was the day I become independent. I stand on my own 2 feet. And hoping that day would come just kept me going. And yeah, there were those moments when I was alone at home or there was no one around that I raided my mom's closet and just took her clothes and wore them. And I take real proud in it, saying that I can wear a sari, drape a sari in 10 minutes. Not even girls can do that. The current generation, not at all. But I can do that. I just learned by observing my mom. All her small tips and tricks and all of those. So yeah, so those were some moments where I actually explored myself as Tanvi. But then again, in those moments, I was always afraid that, okay, someone may walk in. So we used to live in a house where there was like a very big gate. It would make noise when you open it. that was my cue. Okay, someone is coming. I need to change. I was always looking at the window. Okay, if someone finds me out there, it's going to be difficult. So that fear kind of also had a physical manifestation. So my hand shivers. The moment I know that someone is observing me, my hand shivers. And I self-Googled and self-diagnosed it as resting hand tremors. I don't actually know what the medical term for it is or what it is. I just Googled it and I was like, okay, this may be a medical condition. But I know that that fear has kind of made me so afraid of doing anything. And yeah, so my heartbeat used to raise like anything. It was just racing at that in those moments. But yeah, so with that hope, I kept going with that journey. I kept it inside me that someday I'll be able to do something about this without someone having to maybe ostracize me.
And when was it, Tanvi, that this was revealed to your parents?
So that was a complete accident. Uh, in college, there was a time where we used to shift houses a lot. So we still, till date, we don't have a house of our own, right? No place of our own. We have always lived in a rented house. So we used to move around a lot every couple of years or 3 years. There came a point during my college days where we had moved to a new place and my mom stopped going out. And the repercussions of those were I did not get my space because I used to be the only when no one was around. Since my mom stopped going out, there was no space for me to do anything. And then that moment, I made a hasty decision. Maybe I just packed my mom's clothes in a bag. I went to my college because it was summer vacations. I thought, let's find a classroom where no one would be around and let's just dress up. And then I found a classroom. It was like I stayed that place for quite a bit. I did all the reconnaissance of which classroom, who comes the least, which floor, all of that. But to my misfortune, someone did see me through the library and they called in the office administration. I mean, they did not even let me change. They just made me walk in that sari. It's like they paraded me through the college until the office, from that library to that office. I was crying the whole time. I was trying to explain it to them. This is how I feel. This is not something I have control over, right? But being a small town, they did not really understand. They were educators, but they still did not understand. So they handed me over to the police. Then my parents were called to, there was no, it wasn't an offense. So the police did not do anything. There wasn't even a return warning. They just took me in because the college did not know what to do. And then my mom was furious when she came. She bombarded the principal. She was like, why would you give my child to the police? What kind of mistake has my child done? They were like, we don't know the intention of your child. What if your child was a murderer? I mean, just wearing a sari, how does it make you a murderer? They're like, we don't really know what the intent was, why your kid was dressing up like a woman and all of that. And yeah, so then they had to come take me from the police station. That is the day they got to know. And it was difficult for them. They couldn't accept it. But then as soon as my education got over, I moved out of the house. I stayed alone for a few years. I mean, with roommates and then alone for 5 to 6 years. And after a point, maybe I got financially settled. I realized I need to do something about it. They also realized if we don't support the kid is going to go away. So that is where they regressively accepted it. They were like, okay, whatever, it's your life. If you want to live it that way, live it that way. It was a journey even for them.
Was there some initial insensitivity at home?
Yeah, quite a bit. So my father always felt it was a phase. And because my mom told me after this incident, they were talking about it. And my dad said that it's a phase and someday he'll find a girl, he'll marry, get settled, and he'll be okay. He'll become normal. It's just like a phase that maybe kids go through. And then my mom couldn't stand the sight of me dressed as a woman because for her, I was always the male child. So I tried. Initially she was like, whatever you want to do inside the house. Don't go out. Don't bring shame to us in the society. And when I did that, what she said, she couldn't take it. She was a couple of days, she was okay. And then she was like, I can't take the sight of you dressing in my clothes. Just don't do it. So then I decided it's okay. So I just focused on my studies. I just kept it to myself. And once my education was done, I was out. So as soon as my master's was done, I took the first job I got and I moved to Pune and I started living on my own. So for a few years, again, I had roommates, so I couldn't do much about it until much later when I was able to afford my own place and my own room. And after that, I started seeking psychiatric help and psychological evaluations were done and all of those. So yeah, and then my mother finally moved in with me a few years ago. And when I slowly started telling her what it is, she started understanding it through media and through my exposure. And yeah, it was a journey for her as well, to become accepting of the fact. Till date, my dad and I haven't spoken about this. Though we live in the same house, my mom and dad live with me, but I haven't spoken to my dad about it. It's just too, I don't know, maybe even he doesn't want to have that conversation, and even I don't want to because it's just the way it is, and we just go with it.
Tanvi, there was such deep insensitivity at the college.
Yeah.
Then I have read through the story, or maybe I heard you in one of your talks, there was
Yeah.
deeper insensitivity at the police station.
Yeah.
And then there was insensitivity at home.
Yeah.
And you still had to go through, I think, 2 or 3 years more of college, and you went to the same college after.
Yeah.
What were your deepest fears? What were your apprehensions? How did you face the music after all this?
So I didn't have an option, right? So I mean, so after this incident happened, the summer vacations got over. The principal called in my father. They told if someone gives your kid an admission, you can stay, otherwise you can leave. We'll give you a TC and you're out. So then I went to the head of the statistics department. He was a person who knew me quite well. And he urged me to take statistics because he was like, "You're a smart kid, and I want kids like you in my department." Then he asked me what was the incident. I lied to him. I told him it was a dare some kid gave me, and that's why I did it. And he just laughed it off, and he took my admission form and he signed on it, and he's like, "Just take the admission, go." And then he was my one of the first mentors I had. So he treated me as his own kid. He nurtured me. He was very, I mean, I don't know how to say it, but he was very crucial in my journey because he was the first person who took me under his wing, who took care of me of all my mistakes, who took care of me, who guided me throughout. So yeah, so throughout this, though I have had like bad experiences, I've had some amazing people who were my mentors, who took me under their wing, who taught me so many things, who gave me what I am today, right? Because no one, so I realized something, and that's why I say that I'm privileged because everyone works hard. I mean, I've seen so many people working hard but getting nowhere. In my case, I worked hard, but there were good people who acknowledged it and took me to another level. So, and that is where the luck factor comes in. You need luck to have good people. You need to have luck. You need to be lucky to have people who will recognize your hard work and effort and take you to or take you forward. So I've been lucky that way. That's why I say I've been privileged. Uh, the college. So as soon as that thing happened, I took a part-time job. So I would go to college at 7. I would leave at say 11 or 12. Immediately I was out of the college gates. I used to deliver couriers. So I used to work for a courier company. Soon as that was done, I would go to the courier, do my job and home. That's it. So I used to be at college only when I was required and only when had to be in the class or for a practical or in the classroom. That's it. Beyond that, if there was some work to be done at the office, I fortunately in the courier itself, there was a guy who used to work in the same college in the office staff. If there was fees to be paid, I would just give it to him in the office, in courier office, and he'll pay it on my behalf. So I would never go near the office. I would never, I would go to the library only if required. So I would interact with that admin stuff as rarely as possible. So throughout that, it was just, I don't know, I was just trying to live. That's it. Let's just get through this time. and then we'll be out of this.
And the situation with did you have friends back then in college?
I did. None of them knew about it. So
Okay.
that was a good thing because it was summer vacations. No one was around. So no one got to know about and it was all, so there were a lot of rumors that there was some person who was caught, and the rumors you can't believe. So the reality, the truth was completely different from what happened. Because I read the newspapers in the evening. They had my story, right? And that story had nothing to do with what had happened. There was a story I still remember that was so funny. It was like this kid used to constantly dress up as a woman, befriend women, go to the ladies' room, talk to them about private things and all that. I was like, that's a dream of mine. And you put it as a rumor. I had always wished that I could be one of the girls. And you put it out there as a story. That was nothing close to even the truth. That is the day I stopped reading newspapers, or I stopped relying on the media when I read my own news. I realized that none of it is true. It's like someone saw a snake. No one knows if it was a green. Every newspaper is someone said it's a cobra, someone said it's a blue serpent, someone said it's a green farm snake, or someone said rattlesnake. Every newspaper had their own version of the story. And it was after about, now I find it hilarious.
Yeah.
At that point, it was just like, what is happening? But yeah, throughout that, it was an ordeal. It is kind of an ordeal for a trans person. You can't avoid it. Someday it has to happen.
Tanvi, till recently, you say that you maintained two social profiles.
Yeah.
One for the genuine you and
Yeah.
one for the outside you.
Yeah.
And there was a mistake one day where you posted a photo of the genuine you on the outside. And you came to realize it later via certain ends.
Yeah.
Now, that accident actually changed your life.
That did.
You decided that you will no longer justify anything.
Yeah.
And you will come out in the open.
Yeah.
With whatever the situation is. Now, what if that accident would not have happened?
Maybe the things that followed wouldn't have happened. So I still remember that incident. It happened at a friend's place. And he told me that there's a dialogue from a movie Kung Fu Panda. There are no accidents. Right? So that is how it is. It was meant to happen. Because I would never have gathered the courage to do it otherwise. So some things have to happen in that way that you don't have much control over it. Some things you require immense courage for it. So even before that point, I had come out to a few friends, a few close friends, and some colleagues and so on. But every time I had to come out, I used to take them out to some restaurant or some bar, and we used to drink, and then I used to come out because drinking helped me shut off my conscious mind. And it shut off theirs as well, I guess. So a person becomes more open when they're like in an inebriated state. But now I have stopped drinking for the past 1.5 to 2 years because I don't even need it anymore. That was my escape from reality. That was in those moments, my conscious brain just turned off, right? Now I don't need it because now life, so once you get addicted to life, when you realize that, okay, life is much more beautiful. But that to happen, that accident had to happen. That weight had to be lifted, right? It was a weight I was living with. It is like you are bench pressing and that bar is left on your chest with the weights on. You have to keep those weights down to actually experience freedom. It's walking with weights. And the moment, so it's like you are dragging yourself and something is tied to your ankle, a big boulder is tied to your ankle, and you're walking. The moment you're let go of that boulder, you actually know, okay, walking isn't that difficult. Life is not meant to be so difficult. Life is meant to, see, it's a very short life, right? The moment I hit 30 a couple of years ago, I realized half of my life is done. And that's done with the expected, with living with people's expectation. At least let me live the other half the way I want to live it. The lifespan anyways is reduced to 50 and 60. We are not going to survive more than that. Half of it is done. And the moment you realize that, you start living. You realize that you only have one life. You actually start living.
Bravo on stopping drinking.
Yeah.
When you came out, what happened at work?
So fortunately, I had already switched my job back until then. And I was already an inclusive organization where I had introduced myself as Tanvi.
Okay.
But in the other spaces, I was not out yet. So to my old company, to my old colleagues and my friends, I was not out to them, many of them. So that only for them it was, but organization-wise, I was in a good organization already, but accepted me for me.
So talking about friends, did you lose friends which you thought you would never lose? And did you keep some friends which you thought you would lose?
Not really. So I wasn't comfortable with myself, right? When you're not comfortable with yourself, you're not comfortable with people. So I was always an introvert. I still am. I don't talk to people upfront. I like people approaching me and then I'm okay talking. But I always considered myself as an introvert. But what I realized is I'm actually not an introvert. I talk a lot. I chew the ears off of people. That is how much I speak. No wonder that TEDx happened, because I speak so much and talk so much. But then I wasn't comfortable with myself for so many years. So I wasn't comfortable with people. I always felt that the friendships I had, they were all doing a favor for me, or they were pitying me, and they were with me only because they pitied me. Right? So that's why I never had that close friends. There was only a handful of them, and I'm so fortunate that they're still there. Those handful are still there. They never left me. It only became stronger after that. Because once I was allowed to be myself, once I allowed myself to be authentic, my relationship with them rather improved. Because there was always a distance, because there was a distance that I had with myself, and that was always there in my relations as well. The moment I closed the distance between me and myself, it kind of closed the distance between my friends. Now those people, now we meet more often than we ever used to meet. Those handful of friends, they're like everything. I am always around them. They are always around. Because now we are comfortable. Now I am comfortable because I am myself. So now my friendships are much better than they used to be.
Well, 3 cheers for that.
Yeah.
You talked about hope, luck. How do you relate hope and luck to spirituality?
So I had written a blog about this. So my mom feels that I'm an atheist.
Okay.
Because I don't like going to temples or any worship places. What she doesn't understand is that religion and spirituality are two different things. I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious. Because I feel you have to look inwards to find God. Or I don't even say God, it's maybe some superior being, whatever it is. But spirituality is a journey inwards. Religion is a journey outwards. You seek solace in something that is outside when you're following religion. When you're spiritual, you seek solace inside. You try to find peace inside. So in my case, spirituality was something that helped me. I don't know. It's like the Hindi में कहावत है ना, डूबते को तिनके का सहारा. So that was my tinka. I was hanging by it in those moments of darkness, because that is where your faith is truly tested. Your faith in something good. And hope and faith are kind of different words, but they are something that keep a person going. Hope that someday things will be different. Things will be different. Faith that yes, there is something to look forward to. So these things are always related. And that spirituality was something, and I have always been like that. Since childhood, I have been in love of stories, Mahabharata, Ramayana. all of those. Because those stories, they give you life lessons, right? They teach you how to live. They teach you there are so many, I don't know, nuances that people don't catch up to. There are many nuances. So I've always been interested in those. And I love reading about spirituality. So until last year, I guess, there was this Spanish fascination I had with death, right? Because you fear what you do not understand. No one knows what is there in death. I did not understand, so I was afraid of death. So I read a book called Death, written by Sadhguru. He's the only person who has maybe written on this topic in a very. He hasn't talked about afterlife, but he has talked about the process of death. The moment I read about it, my fear vanished because I realized, okay, this is the process of death. This is how death happens and what actually is death. So that is how spirituality actually helps you in so many ways. It helps you overcome your fears. And the moment the fear is gone, you can actually live.
What is one of your favorite stories full of nuances from our epics?
There are so many, I can't tell you. I mean, so I have also always been known to, so I used to do theater, right, for a bit. So all the plays that I've written so far have been a modernized version of those epics.
Oh.
So the story I wrote in school for one of the plays was Modern Eklavya, which was the story of Eklavya in a modern tone. If Eklavya had to exist today, what would actually Eklavya be? Would he be the ideal student that was described there? Would he actually give off his thumb? Or would he take his guru's thumb? Right? So that was the concept behind it. And there are so many beautiful stories, but not only those Ramayana and Mahabharatas. There are so many moral stories that we were taught that I don't think the children today are taught, whether it be Akbar Birbal, whether it be Vikram Vedal. All those stories had, or whether it be Panchatantra for that matter, all of these stories had some moral values, right? And Mahabharata has many nuances in the sense many people don't know about the Ajñatvas that in Mahabharata the Pandavas had to go through.
Yes.
Yeah. Do people know that Arjuna, the greatest warrior of them all, had to pretend to be a dancer in a royal court, a woman dancer in a royal court?
Yeah.
So essentially, people look at cross-dressing in a bad way now. They call cross-dressers a psycho. Just yesterday, I had gone to a salon and they described it as a psycho behavior to cross-dress, to dress in a man dressing in woman's clothes. And in my mind, did you even know that during Ajñatvas, Arjuna used to cross-dress? So cross-dressing has been there since then.
Absolutely.
And you look down upon it now. A warrior of Arjuna's might.
Yes.
So people who say that this is not our culture don't even know their own culture. How many people actually know what culture is? How many people know that Hijrah comes from Islam? That Islam was where, so back then the kings used to have harems, then they used to basically have a Hijrah person in the queen's quarters to take care of the queen. That is how deep-rooted all of these things are in our culture. And then, did you know that heels were actually invented for men? So in the older times, especially Victorian kings and kings used to wear heels so they look taller to their queens, because it was a thing of pride and ego that they had to look taller to their queens. So that is how heels were invented.
Okay.
Later on, women started wearing it and it was stylized and all that. But it was essentially for men. Our kings and queens wore anarkali back then. Kings wore anarkali. Kings did singar. They wore jewelries. They had long hair. So you really don't know about your culture that much. And you just say this is not our culture. You really don't know about it.
Yeah, I think your own journey have made you look into this.
Exactly. So those are the nuances that people don't see.
Yes. and you relate to it in such a deeper way, and then the way you speak about it, tells people like us about the conviction which you are carrying. I'm in awe of all the forbearance, the fortitude, even the courage which you have had to hold this to yourself all through the years, face the situation, face the world, home, professional life, study life. I just wonder about the trans people who are often cited at toll gates. Yes, and they have, that is their only way of making a living. And the kind of courage which they require to come out there in the open and present themselves day and night to the world outside. So having said that, what do you do, Tanvi, to support the community, to support their cause, to give them a boost of hope?
So when I started speaking, right, I started a project called Ally Nation, where we used to do free gender sensitization sessions. So during that point, and then attending a lot of D&I forums, I realized there are very few trans speakers who can talk about trans struggles, trans experiences. So I use my privilege of education, of being able to articulate thoughts and present them on a forum. I use that as often as possible. So I speak in events, I speak in people, so I advocate for the community. Apart from that, what you spoke about, the Hijra community that has to, beg for a living or do sex work and all of those. So there are a lot of misconceptions around it. So whenever I speak, whether it be my trainings or I definitely cover the Hijra topic, because I tell people it seems like they're begging and thinking that why aren't they working and doing all of that. What I tell them is, basically, if I have to ask a friend for money, I have to keep my self-esteem aside for a moment, right? I have to keep myself, and I think twice before I ask a friend for money. Okay, I need a loan. These people are basically, they're not, begging is not that easy. You're selling your self-respect just to have ration at your home, right? To have food on your plate. And are they doing it for free? They are giving you blessings in exchange. And I was telling the person who was doing my hair yesterday at the salon, I told her that many people say that their blessings as well as their curses come true. And I was telling her there's a reason for that. They have been abused so much, they have been hurt so much that whatever they say comes from the heart, whether it be a blessing, whether it be a curse. And when you have been abused so much, the hurt is painful, whereas the happiness is also. So I still remember that day I was at a signal in Pune. So there was this trans woman who was begging, and I opened my wallet and I had like 10-20 bucks. I gave it to her, and she saw a 500 rupees note in my wallet. She was like, "Wo de de, mera aaj ka ration ho jayega." And I just gave it to her. And the genuine joy I saw on her face, that I maybe avoided a few more cars that she has to beg to. 500 bucks. Tell me, what is the value of 500 bucks for a person today? You spend more than that on a coffee in Starbucks. But for them, that's a ration for their day. And that joy I saw. But right now I'm working on something, so I don't want to say anything, but I'm working on something where I create employment opportunities for them. So there are a few things that I am starting. It may not start this year, but somewhere in the next 2 or 3 years, where I start creating employment for them. But then again, it's a system. So you need to understand Hijra is a closed community. It's a system. So go into that system, you need to go through some hurdles, you need to do some things. So all those with consideration, I am trying to create, because see, I understand I'm using my privilege to speak. But I also realize that that's not enough. I have to do something on the ground if I have to actually make, because that 500 bucks, the joy I saw on her face made me realize that if I create an employment opportunity for a person like her, and I give some amount of dignity and respect back to her, that's all I can do in my life, right? Anyone can do in their lives. Just because we all are very nuclear now. It's me, my family, मेरे मेरे बच्चे, but beyond that, what? उसके बाद क्या? उसके beyond भी तो जिंदगी है ना. Because after you die, after you pass away, there will be a photo of you hanging on the wall. Once a year हार बदला जाएगा उसका. कुछ साल बाद तुम्हारे आने वाली पीढ़ी तुमको भूल जाएगी. The first generation will remember, the second one will forget, and then you will be part of only the stories. अरे नाना तो ऐसे करते थे, दादा तो ये करते थे. बट अगर दुनिया में आया तो 4 लोगों की जिंदगी सुधार दो. At least those 4 people will remember you. यार, when this person was there, at least our life was a bit easier. So अगर आया तो ऐसे, so what is the use of living if you just come and go? There are like millions and billions of us.
Yeah, I was reading, so like your penchant, I have a penchant for Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah.
And I was reading a commentary by one of the Vidwans. And उन्होंने लिखा कि man is equal to animal plus intellect.
Yeah. That's all it is.
So, like you said that ऐसे ही आए और ऐसे ही चले गए is like operating without that intellect which is to you.
Exactly. Yeah. Because if it's a blessing to be born as a human, right? Indeed. And as per Hinduism, ये से तुमको 33 करोड़ जन्म लेने पड़ते हैं before you actually get a human birth. And I was reading about it in the spiritual terms. I understand it. It's based on your karma. So every person, you and I are talking today, every person is related to each other through karma, which we in Hindi call runanubandh. Run is कर्ज,
yes,
loan, and runanubandh is basically a relationship based on loans.
Yes.
So we all are related to each other through some karmic loans, and unless you get rid of that, you can't even meet the universal soul, right? If your soul has to master here, you have to get rid of all these loans. And that is how we are connected to each other. So this 33 crore lives you have to take are all those connections, loans. So even if I kill a cockroach, I have to be born as a cockroach. So that I know the pain that cockroach went through when I by mistake killed it or whatever. So there are 33 crores or more species of animals that you have to go through before you can get a human life. So why not use that if you had to?
मैं यही कह रहा था, ये ऋणानुबंध हमारा भी है कि हम दोनों एक दूसरे से
Exactly. It has to be, because otherwise, see, otherwise how would we speak ever, right? You spoke to someone, you spoke to Ramveer got to know me through TEDx. Correct. So these, otherwise there was no relationship that was meant to happen.
Indeed.
There has to be some karmic loop that is left.
Tanvi, what are some of the basic, most basic things you can tell people like us to incorporate so that our sensitivity towards the trans community or generally our sensitivity increases?
There's only one basic thing that everyone needs as a human, which is empathy. Humans feel, animals feel as well, but the sensitivity that they have against what a human has is different. A lion cannot step into a deer's shoes and be empathetic for a deer, because for it has to hunt and eat. Humans have that ability to empathize with another person. Even though you are not me, but you can empathize with me just by thinking what my struggles could be. Just thinking which washroom to use, right? Which you take as a granted privilege. You don't have to think about it. You just enter the male washroom. For me, I'm Tanvi. I'm presenting myself as a male just due to my own securities in the society. Going to a male washroom against going to a female washroom is a question, right? Which is like taken for granted for a cisgender person. So some amount of empathy goes a long way. So as I said about the Hijra community, I was doing a session in my office, a speaker session, and there was this question: The Hijra people become aggressive at the signals if you don't give them money. How do I deal with it? I told them, why do you want to deal with it? Right? You just need to empathize. You give them some money, they'll go away. Why are they being aggressive? You need to understand that they're abused on a daily basis. They're abused by the law enforcing authority. They're abused by the society. They have been ostracized. They are struggling to survive. And there is this famous dialogue I like to use always from Mary Kom, किसी को इतना भी मत डराओ कि वो डरना भूल जाए. They have been abused so much कि अभी उनको डर नहीं लगता. अगर तुम उनको थोड़ा प्यार दिखाओगे ना तो शायद उनको अजीब लगे. But now they're not afraid anymore. So sometimes when life is so unfair to you, you tend to become aggressive. So do you deal aggression with aggression? No. You deal aggression with empathy. You just, if you don't want to give them money, just say sorry and just, that's it. They're not going to break your windows. Trust me, even because they know that what is going in store for them if that happens. They're already abused by the law enforcing authority, so they won't take law in their hands. So you need to have a little bit of empathy, and not only for trans people, but for people in general.
Yes.
You need to have for everyone, because I really don't know at this point I'm talking to what I don't really know what is happening in their life. So if in a moment of rage you say something to me, I just need to have an empathy. Okay, something has gone wrong. If I say no, Harsh is a very bad person, that's not the truth. In that moment, something was wrong. Yeah. And if I realize that, okay, in that moment, maybe something would have happened to Harsh, that's all you need. And you'll realize there are no bad people in this world, only bad situations.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, just yesterday, I was reading that to say that someone is a bad person, how judgmental it is.
It is.
Just replace it by saying that he or she did a bad action.
Yeah, what you need to realize, maybe in that situation, you would have done the same.
Yeah.
And so many Bollywood movie spin-offs are based on that, where say there is a villain like a don or a murderer, but then you see the first crime they did was stealing a loaf of bread, for which they were treated unfairly. So where there is a bad, there was always some good, but that good kind of did not pan out. So the person just decided, okay, if it's and they think the same way. You think that is a bad person, that person thinks the world is bad. It's the same thing.
So, Tanvi, is there anything else you would like to add to today's conversation, something which you are urging to add and maybe I have not asked something?
No, actually, it has been an absolute pleasure talking to you, because there are very few avenues where I get to have such intellectual discussions, because many people find this a very boring conversation. Especially the moment I start talking about spirituality, I lose people. People like keep that aside, because many people don't understand it.
Yeah.
So what I need to, there's only one thing that I've always wanted to say, I always say. And the only reason I don't say it is not to sound superior to others or arrogant. But the simple thing is, don't take anything on face value. Right? Whether it be religion, whether it be spirituality, whether it be culture, the way people use it, don't think anything on face value. Put your own. So as you said, human is just animal plus intellect. Use intellect. Don't be that lion in a circus where you just put a whip and you sit on the chair. You have to, that's the difference between being literate and educated. Be educated, don't just be literate.
Yeah.
Put your own mind. So I always say, you see the differences. There was one of the forums in TNI where I spoke about this, that we say, okay, Hindu and Muslims are so different. But do you realize why they are different? So Hinduism or Hindus came from the Indus Valley civilization. We had plenty of water. It was a water civilization, right? Because we lived in a valley. Naturally, we tended to become vegetarians. Where did Islam come from? It came from the desert. They did not have vegetables to eat. So they had to rely on non-vegetarian or animals to get their nourishment. We came from a civilization where there was plenty of water. So when we wash hands like this. We are okay with water going down, being wasted. Every puja or anything we do in Hinduism involves water. Islam came from desert. There wasn't much water. So when they wash hands, they'll wash it like this so that they don't end up wasting water. They may bathe once a week because there was no water. So instead they do wuzu. Wuzu is basically cleaning the 5 parts of your body, which are the most dirty, behind your ears, your arms, your legs. You just need to understand why the differences are there. Don't take it on face value. Just someone said, okay, हम तो बहुत अलग है. तुम क्यों अलग हो? तुमको भी पता है तुम क्यों अलग हो. तुम अलग जगह पे पैदा हुए थे बस. तुम्हारा रिलीजन अलग जगह पे पैदा हुआ था. And Hinduism says that every child is born religionless. Every child is born Sanatan, right? हम सनातन धर्म बोलते. Actually, Hinduism में Sanatan. Sanatan, what is Sanatan? Sanatan is devoid of everything.
Yeah.
So what do we do once a child is born? We give them shiksha and what Hinduism is a way of life, Islam is a way of life. That child is born or taught to live a way of life. That is what religion's job is, just teach a person how to live their lives maybe. But you have to choose how you want to go with it. So that is the only thing, just animal plus intellect. Intellect has to be important.
Tanvi, I think that was a brilliant explanation of what face value is and what it is not.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. In fact, the way you talked about Sanatan, devoid of everything, and therefore Sanatan is also eternal.
It is, exactly.
In its own way, So,
yeah, it is.
Yeah. Well, Tanvi, on that note, it has been a real pleasure, an eye-opening conversation with you. And I hope that not only for me, but all those who watch this, hear this, they can make a small tad improvement in the way they think about life.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a lovely discussion with you. It's been lovely talking to you.